Hi, everyone. Greetings. Welcome to another edition of Radio Gunk. And today I'm really, really happy to have my friend Ian Halperin on with me today. And so Ian's doing like a really curious thing. He's written a book, and it's almost like a really, really interesting serial, if you will, because it's coming out in parts. So Ian, come on and say hi, and we'll talk you through a little bit.
Hey, hi to everybody at Radio Gunk, and I just want to thank Monique for really inspiring me to finally do this. I know she became a bit skeptical that, hey, is this guy going to write about Howard or not? But I finally was able to get it out. I had a lot of pressure to not get it out. And I got to say kudos to you, Monique, because you just stay on the playing field. And actually, what I realized by getting to know you over the past few years is that you're one hell of a broadcaster. And I think you have a great future ahead of you in this industry, with or without Mr. Stern. And I think you should just take it to the next level. The time is now, because really, again, you're a fantastic broadcaster.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You know, it's so...
I sincerely mean it. I sincerely mean it.
I really, really appreciate that. You know, it's so rare that you get to talk to somebody who actually appreciates what you do, because, you know, God knows, since 97% of the people I have on there are Howard Stern fans / haters, and they're quite possibly some of the meanest and, you know, really just kind of rancid about things that you do and hate on you and stuff like that. So it is a little bit debilitating every once in a while to do what we do. And
no, you have a lot of talent, and there's a lot of room for you, in my opinion, to really succeed in this business, because the world needs more and more good broadcasters, and especially of the female gender. So, no, it's great. I mean, the Stern thing's one thing. You have a niche with it, but I definitely feel that there's other things waiting for you out there, and bigger and better things.
Oh, I love you for that. Thank you so much.
No, so absolutely.
So Ian's on with us today because he has written, it's actually volume 1 of I'm going to assume it's going to wind up being like War and Peace, but it's called Controversy, Sexualized and Dirty Money by the World's Powerful Elite. And he started out with a bang. You know, it was a really, really good read. And it just kind of focused in and honed in on Jeffrey Epstein and his inexplicable rise, actually, into being one of the world's most secretive, reclusive, yet amazingly prolific in the area of pedophilia, and how it came to be. And I started to talk to Ian about it when he really, really put pen to paper about the book. And it just so happened that Jeffrey Epstein was a big Stern fan. So we're going to get to that kind of in a moment. But, you know, as I was reading through the book and I was highlighting out things that I wanted to ask you about, I clearly need to start with the Epstein stuff and talk about it. But give me what the impetus was for the book that was originally a Howard book, but then how it kind of morphed into being something just so much bigger about so much more.
Well, look, I'm going to say this. I have the same publisher as Howard. And when I approached them to do the Howard book, they were not thrilled. And I've been with that publisher forever. It's the only time when I did the Kardashian book, the Kardashians are on that publisher too. They said, no, bring it on. I was shocked. They said, no, we don't care. They put out the Kris Jenner book, her autobiography, and then I came with the Kardashian dynasty, and I never thought they'd go for it. They went for it, but with Howard, whoa.
Why?
The backlash I received was incredible because they said he's just our bestseller. Like, we're not messing with him, sorry. And they wouldn't put it out. So I had other people interested, but then a lot of threats behind the scene, including some death threats from big Howard fans. And then I was ill for about a year.
Right.
So it just went on the back. It went on the back burner. And then I saw a window of opportunity going through my notes because after Epstein was arrested again in July of, when was it? 2019.
It's literally just a year ago.
Yeah, 2019. He was arrested getting off a plane from Paris. And then I went through all my notes because I interviewed him a couple of times, mainly one time though. I met him several times because I wrote a bestseller years ago about the modeling business.
Shut Up and Smile, right?
Well, there were two, Shut Up and Smile and then Bad and Beautiful. And Bad and Beautiful became a huge bestseller because of Jackie Collins, the former, the late great writer. She sold about 500 million books, I kid you not, in her career. And she basically saved my career because she voted it for a Book of the Year award. And I remember I got a call from the English media, your book just won Book of the Year. I said, what book? I was like, I forgot about the book. And it was all because of Jackie, and I became good friends with her. And for that book, I actually interviewed a not so famous at the time, Jeffrey Epstein. He was one of my key sources because he was good friends with a sleaze bucket modeling agent, Jean-Luc Brunel. And he spilled the goods to me on Brunel. And I sat with him for hours and hours at this sort of European deli. It was called Ben Ash Deli, across the street from Carnegie Deli in New York City in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And he started telling me all these wild stories, like about how he thought, sex with underage people should be legal. He said back in the day it was legal. He sees no reason why it should be illegal to have sex with underage girls. Then he started going off about Stern. It seemed he was jealous of Stern because he said the only guy, quote unquote, to get more pussy than him in New York was Howard. I said, are you serious? He said, yeah.
Really?
He said that guy has strippers coming in and hookers and all kinds of women just taking off their clothes while he's doing his show. So he seemed to have a bit of jealousy toward Howard and started going off about Stern. And, he was the guy who originally put me on to the Sinatra story. Epstein claimed he knew people in the Gambino family who had allegedly put a hit out on Howard's life because of at Frank Sinatra's request. Because apparently,
I love that story. Yeah. I have to tell you that we're planning an entire Scores episode, and it's really kind of geared into the whole mafia scene and what Scores actually was. Yeah. So this actually will really fit in and tie in nicely.
Perfect.
And I love that about it. But I do want to talk a little bit about Epstein because there's so many 6 degrees of separation with him and so many people that are here now famous and what's going on with them. Like for argument's sake, the fact that he was able to be a teacher at Dalton at 20 years old, hired by A.G. Barr's father, Donald Barr.
That's crazy.
How is that possible? Like, who does that without even checking their references?
Yeah, that's a great question. He forged his CV. He really had no street cred.
He's 20.
No graduation, nothing. And he gets in there and then he starts seducing students and sexually harassing them. I don't know if that would be possible today, but he was slick. He was slick, even with me. Like, I had no idea when I interviewed him that, 20 years later, this guy would be the most notorious child sex trafficker in the world.
Prolific. Prolific.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder how he had any friggin' time to do anything else in his life.
I know.
Seriously,
I know.
the amount of girls coming in and out of his house to give him massages, blowjobs, and jerk offs. How do you find the time? You know, I mean, I feel like there's a big underpinning of bribery that has yet to come out, you know, especially now with what's going on with Leon Black and, you know, just why he paid him $50 million over the course of the last couple of years. There is no way that there's no tapes. There's just no way.
Well, I saved one exclusive for you, which I don't think I've released yet. I'll release in subsequent chapters because I just finished week 4. It comes out every Tuesday, a different chapter or two. And, because you mentioned Black with the 50 million. Well, you know, they said Bill Clinton was on Epstein's plane,
right,
26 times, and I have proof that it was much more. It was 61 times, and I'm giving you that exclusive today because a lot of the flights weren't logged properly. Epstein asked his staff, "Hey, do you mind not logging this flight?" You know, he didn't want to leave a paper trail. So I was able, through ex-employees of Epstein, to really pinpoint the number of times Slick Willie was on the Lolita Express, Epstein's private plane. And it turns out it was 61, not 26.
That's amazing. That's amazing to me. Like, you know, just
and that's exclusive to you.
I love it.
You got the exclusive on that today.
Don't think for a second.
I don't know if I have many more exclusives for you. Yeah.
You know, I think to myself sometimes, though, you know, with somebody like a Jeffrey Epstein, do you think, you know, knowing that he was like never married and didn't have any children, do you think that maybe he was impotent or you know, do you think that he used condoms? Do you think that he, you know, because you never hear about anybody having an abortion with him or you know, anything about children. And I just can't imagine for the life of me how somebody could be such a prolific pedophile and something like that never having come out, you know?
It's a good point. First of all, I interviewed countless women who were sexually harassed by Epstein. They all said he had a weird-shaped penis. That's the first thing. Everybody. They said his penis looked really weird. It was curved. It was just very disfigured, not your average penis. And the other thing, you make a good point. Like, where's the kids? Where's the trail that he'd leave, a guy with so many women? I've asked that question to everyone, and nobody seems to have the right answer. Maybe his sperm count was just so low, but there's no scientific proof I've been able to come across. Now, getting back to the Howard stuff, I do want to reveal. I saved this for you. That's why I told you I was going to put in Howard stuff in week 4, but I knew we were doing this interview, so I think I'll put it in week 5.
Okay.
He was so obsessed with Howard. I wanted you to have this first too, that he'd have some of his security team stalk Howard because he was so obsessed with him and a bit jealous, I guess, or infatuated, that he'd have Howard followed wherever he went. And apparently, somehow, somewhere, he was able to take photos, his security people, of Howard's private parts. To this day, I don't know. I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding you. Now, it might have been through computer hacking, but apparently those photos do exist, and they're somewhere. I've never seen.
Christ. Yeah, okay. Let me process that for a second, because
that's what
the only thing I can think about something like that is that he probably has some sort of, because I feel like bribery is just such a huge part of what made Jeffrey Epstein become who he was and as wealthy as he was. And, he probably had like some bizarre number coding system that even if you did get into his safe or something and you saw something that was like, 497-H26, only he and maybe one other person would know that that's who that is, and so it could be referenced at any time. Right. Like, I kind of
but
think that that's how he
yes,
played the game. That's
his
what I would think.
operation was very sophisticated, and it could be along the lines of what you're detailing. But from what I hear, somehow he was able to hack into Stern's computer, and apparently Stern used to jerk off to porn. And apparently he was able to get photos of Stern jerking off at one point.
He claims
And
he still
it's
does,
really,
and he also claims that he puts tape over his computer's eye so that because he always thinks
well,
that
maybe,
somebody is actually looking.
yeah, but maybe he does that now because I think Howard's aware of the Epstein rumors, and I think it was after those rumors circulated some 20 years ago that Howard started taping up the camera.
Curious, because he really very rarely brings up the Epstein thing, almost as much as he doesn't bring up the Weinstein thing. And,
Yeah,
these aren't people that he chooses to kind of go after. Like, he's going to go after Trump every fucking day that he's on air, but he'll never go
yeah,
after like a Epstein or a Weinstein or anyone like that, or anyone that's
yeah.
associated with being just like a disgusting, vile human being. Did you find Jeffrey to be like a very affable guy? Like, was he somebody that you would want to be in his like
Now,
world and in his aura?
I thought he had bipolar tendencies. He comes across very credible, legit, but as the conversation progresses, you realize this guy's talking out of his ass a lot and really gloating a bit TMI about his exploits with women and not hiding his habit to chase underage girls at all. So I found him as the conversation wore on. I found him to be a bit of a loose cannon.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. And it's actually shocking to this day that he got away with it for as long as he did in so many different places, in New
Yeah,
York and Florida and Ireland, New Mexico,
yeah,
France.
yes,
I mean,
yes,
just a prolific pedophile.
yeah.
And
No, that's a very good description. An extremely prolific pedophile and a great con man. This guy handled Leslie Wexner's money. Very prolific people. He handled their financial portfolios, and
that
just to
home,
get those.
yeah, that
Yeah,
townhouse, which I've passed by many a time in the 70s over there, that townhouse
sure.
was owned by Les Wexner, and he gave it
Yes,
to him. It's one of the most expensive
yes,
properties in all of Manhattan, and he just
yeah.
gives it to him.
Yeah, I think
You know,
it's 72 rooms, something crazy like that.
I feel like it's really the tip of the
gargantuan.
iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg.
Gargantuan. Now, you alluded to Stern not talking much about the Epstein scandal. That's interesting because I don't listen to Howard anymore, mainly because this is just my opinion. I feel that he sort of sold out over
Oh,
the
no shit.
years.
No shit.
No, I'm saying that with all seriousness and all due respect for everybody. It's just not my cup of tea. I find them, pandering too much to the celebrities instead of giving us the inside scoop on them. And I think, in hindsight, Anthony Cumia from the old Opie and Anthony show, he told me it was like a con job that Stern made us believe. He was giving us all these scoops about the celebrities, but all that he wanted to do was become part of them, one of them. And
Of
that's
course.
not in my words. That's from Anthony Cumia.
Of course. And like I mentioned in your book, he finally got
Yeah,
to sit with the cool kids. And so, he was never going to trash them again. It's amazing to me. There was this whole Ellen scandal where everybody knows she's an absolute fucking twat of a human being and just like a horrific
yeah,
boss. And so people started
yeah,
coming out of the woodwork about it. And he said, my only advice to her is to just let it go. Just admit to it and let it go and move on. And it's like, wow, back in the day, you would never, ever, ever indulge, somebody who was
you're
this
right.
vile and who was such a prick to everybody. You
You're right.
would
Now,
excoriate
of course.
them.
You mentioned Ellen. I've known about Ellen for years because her publicist, his name was Bruce, I forget his last name. He was also the publicist for what's his face? I saw him in concert. Chris Brown. He was
Uh-huh.
also the publicist for the old running back who got into trouble, Adrian Peterson. So his roster's filled with
Really?
troublemakers, but he's a nice guy. And I remember we were at the beach maybe 4.5, 5 years ago, and he was telling me Ellen's the biggest prick he's ever worked with, ever. I said, dude, are you serious? You work for her. He said, look, man, I've never worked with a worse human being than Ellen DeGeneres. And he started going on. And, I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know if he was talking out of his ass because I just was confused. Why would he be telling me this? And I guess he was right, because several years later, it all came to fruition.
Yeah, she's just very angry and she's bitchy. And, the sad part about people like her, and I think it's just so prevalent in that world, is like anybody will tell you, the Bob Evans of the world are completely correct. You will never work in this town again. If you're a troublemaker in Hollywood, and it doesn't matter whether you're a cameraman or a PA or whatever the fuck you are, if you even, remotely whisper about somebody being like a horrific human being, your shit is gone and you will not work in this town again, and everybody's so scared to be that person. But, everybody's very, very, very empowered now. So I guess it gives them the ability to have this shit come out. And, and she did her mea culpa, and now she's just moved on. Same thing with Jimmy Kimmel, the whole blackface thing that he went through. He had to take off the whole friggin' summer so that he wouldn't have the backlash from what was going on with that. So he took off the rest of the summer, said, fuck it, and came back as if nothing was wrong. And then it was over,
Yeah. And then we got to wonder if these guys deserve second chances. Well, do people like Morgan Spurlock, who admitted he was a womanizer, does he deserve a second chance? Does, all these other people, because the Me Too movement destroyed a lot of people, which is fine. A lot of them are pigs. And but if we're talking about second chances, then maybe everybody deserves a second chance.
If they deserve a second chance. Some people, it's really okay if they fall into the netherworld of not being seen again, because really, who gives a shit? I look at people like Louis C.K., who, amazing comedian, writes scripts, is in tons of things, and, it's like a really funny guy. And then, a couple of women come out and say, yeah, well, he basically likes to jerk off into plants while you're standing there and ask him to touch him. And it's like, I'm not necessarily sure you get a pass for being that kind of douchebag. You know what I mean? Because there is a line between, listen, a lot of women are absolute fucking cunt bosses. I had one. I hated her more than life itself. But, to be a boss that sucks, and to be somebody who wants you to watch him play with himself while he jerks off into a plant, two completely different animals. So some people don't deserve to have a second chance, and others, they're successful, they're popular, they're still beloved, so they get the pass. Some do, some don't.
100%.
I mean, for how long did people know about Bill Cosby and what a disgusting degenerate he was with roofies and how he raped women? This was a known, unknown secret for years and years and years, but everybody gave him a pass because it was Bill Cosby. It's America's favorite dad. They should only know how many women he fucking raped. And now, there he is. He sits in jail. He deserves to die with that as being his legacy in the world. Fuck him.
Yeah, but my question to you is, does Ellen deserve a second chance?
I personally can't stand her. I've never liked her. I think I think that I could even look at her and tell you that she was probably a miserable, horrible fucking person. If you told me that she tried to come on to like some female assistants or she did things like that, or she evilly had people fired never to be seen again, then no, she doesn't deserve a second chance. But if people are just coming out with like sour grapes and saying, what a twat she was to them, then I'm going to let her have a pass. And then, not that I've ever watched a show in my life, honestly, but I think that on her show, above and beyond who she is in private. On her show, she does good things for some people. And I think that the bored fat ass housewives out there who like her appreciate that about her. And, you don't hear shit like this about Oprah, who's beloved, who is also like queen of all media, really, as compared to Howard, who has no fucking media. And, you don't hear these things about people like her. So it just takes a special kind of person to be, just fucking pure evil. But if the rest of the world is giving her a pass on it, I don't really give a shit. She doesn't come into my world one way or the other, so whatever, knock yourself out.
Now,
people will
my
always
editor,
my
editor, Mark Sarantino, first of all, he wanted to thank you for your participation in the book. He thought your quotes were fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And same with the publisher. They thought you were amazing. And then they had a couple of questions. So I want to ask you them.
Oh, I love it. Go ahead.
One is your thoughts on Opie. Because I know you were friends with Tim Saban, and they wanted, like, straight up, your thoughts on Greg Opie Hughes.
So Opie. I think Opie is really not good on his own, and he's starting a new show. Actually, he's starting a new YouTube vlogcast with Bubba the Love Sponge, of all people. Yeah, it's going to be like the Opie and Bubba show.
Did YouTube hire Opie?
Well, you don't hire on YouTube. You know what I mean? Okay. Like, I think that he's just doing it there, and hoping to monetize it or something like that. I feel like Opie went through a couple of different incantations of who he is. He started out as a DJ kind of guy. I think Anthony absolutely drove that show, but not too dissimilar in a very, 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 very small way. The way I have to drive our show, because the guys that go off into like a million different directions, and I get that you need somebody to steer the ship. So Opie was more the ship steerer, and Cumia was the shit stirrer, and so that made a really good combination of people. It was the right combination at the right time, and it takes a lot to make that sauce really taste good and be perfect. But when they started to have their like internal strifes and their internal issues, then there's always one clear winner, and that had to be Anthony, honestly.
Yeah.
And Opie on his own could not replicate the Anthony again. Whereas like a Howard got very, very lucky with being able to lose Jackie and gain an Artie. Opie, I don't think really had that ability. I mean, he had Jim, right, for a while. But it just wasn't the same. And so people who were, fanatics, right? So they all were like, okay, yeah, this isn't the same. And now that Jim has his own show with some other guy, again, it's another filter. It's not the same. And so the thing that made them what they were was diluted in a lot of ways, I think. And so now I think Opie is kind of trying to find his way again in terms of what's going to make him popular. I mean, even the guy who he used to be on all the time with, who was a chef, who actually wound up passing away, unfortunately. I think he had a heart attack or something.
He died. I met him.
Yeah. So he was a great foil for Opie. He brought a different kind of spin to an Opie type of show. He was funny.
I met him on the show, 44 years old.
Yeah, people loved him on that show. And, he became super popular from it. And he wound up opening up a big, beautiful restaurant. I remember Tim and I were supposed to go there one night, and I kind of think I blew Tim off that night. I can't even remember, but I just never got to go there and appreciate who he was. But then again, Opie had another person where he had something that was a good yin to his yang. And unfortunately, he lost that. So I think he's, once again, reinventing himself and trying to do the same thing with Bubba. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
What happened with Opie at that other place? What were they called? Where Tim Saban was? What was that called again?
Western One?
Yeah. Westwood
You
One.
know,
What happened there?
I'm a little curious about what happened there. I'm not really sure. The way Westwood One was working at that time is that, Tim was in charge of talent, basically, pulling together what would become Westwood One's podcast division. So it wasn't radio per se; it was really more of the podcast thing. And Opie, along with a lot of names that Tim knew and top guys, came over to Westwood One. And I think what happened is, maybe the deal that they cut with podcasters, because they're not quite the same as what they do with people on the radio, just in terms of the financial splits and the commercials that they get, and how the revenue stream basically works, because it's really based on downloads as opposed to pure listeners on a hourly basis. So I'm not necessarily sure that he liked his deal. So I think, for me, that's the reason that he left, because it was kind of short-lived. It wasn't exactly like it was like a long-term thing there. And then I stopped following him because there was something going on, I think, with like Scott Salem on the Howard Stern show, where Howard didn't contribute any money to Scott Salem's wife's GoFundMe when she was dying of cancer. And they didn't have enough money saved to put her through all the different therapies and things that she needed. So apparently the New York Post came calling, and one of the people that they asked for a comment from was Opie. And, I used to chat with him. He would never come on my fucking show. He was always like, oh, wait until, I settle things with Sirius, then I promise I'll come on. And he never did. And then, he would do a show that was like related to Stern, and he'd be like, don't forget to promote this on your forum and blah, 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 but still wouldn't come on. And, and I was like, well, go fuck yourself. And as it turns out, in the New York Post article that was written, he used my comments, because I can write fairly well when I want to. And he used my comments. And I was like, you motherfucker, I can't believe you used my comments. I was like, wow. Nice comments there, Opie. And they were totally taken from me because he didn't really know anything about the situation, yet they asked him for a comment about it. So after that, I just unfollowed him, and I don't have any, I have no thoughts about him whatsoever right now. So.
Yeah, no, he made a lot of enemies. I was on that show for many years.
I know you were.
And really, I never put it together until the last couple of years, when people used to take me outside the studio and everybody was complaining about Opie. And then this was after Anthony left and started his Compound Media Network. And Opie was hosting the show with Jim Norton at the time, who's a dear friend of mine and very talented guy.
Yeah.
And I was just hearing these rumblings, and I was wondering, okay, maybe everybody's tired or something, and they're looking for, to shake it up. But then Opie and Jim had a big fallout, which went public, and that was it for me, because Jim's a pretty nice guy, straight up, very loyal, and there's no way I was going to side with Opie against Jim.
No, why would you? I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
That's really all I've got to say on Opie. Not going to lie. I have no feeling for him.
Now, regarding Anthony, it's incredible, because Anthony and I were notorious for fighting each other on the show. It was crazy. I don't like doing the slapstick, but I couldn't compete with Anthony. I mean, he's a genius comedian. So I thought we were huge enemies, because this went on for years. It wasn't like one or two times. And then when Anthony started Compound Media, his booker at the time, I believe his partner there, his name was Keith Maresca. Mm. And Keith emailed me the first week and said, hey, would you come on the show? I thought the guy was on crack. I said, why would Anthony want me on? It makes no sense. I thought we hated each other. So a few months later, I actually was in New York, so they got me on the show, and I walked in, and Anthony was so nice to me. It was like I thought I was in a dream. I thought we hated each other, Anthony and I. And then we got to know each other over the past, I'd say, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I realized this guy's a comical genius. I'd see him coming into the studio. The show starts at 4 o'clock, and he'd come in like 10 to 4, no notes, nothing. And he'd open up with a monologue, just riffing it off the top of his head. And that blew me away. I said, okay, this guy's the real deal, you know.
Yeah, it's a
He's
special
got
talent to
major
be able to do that.
chops.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been on his show many times since, and, you know, we don't fight each other anymore. Maybe all the listeners want to hear us doing that. I don't know why we don't, but I guess Anthony's moved to a different territory now, and he's really shown me a lot of respect, and I appreciate it. You know, and I realize.
I'll tell you my two things about Anthony, and the two things that probably, first off, one thing's just a comment. You know, the fact that he, you know, is taking 17-year-old girls as his girlfriends and taking them to their proms is quite possibly one of the most disturbing things that I know about an Anthony Cumia. And so I'm always curious about his issues with younger girls. I'm not going to lie. And then I also think my second thought on him, and believe me, you know, my biggest regret is that I didn't do a really, really fine interview with him when we had him on, because I never really listened to their show. And, you know, I was still very much a Howard Stern loyalist. So, you know, it was just like a silly kind of goof kind of thing. And it wasn't really as good as it could have possibly have been. But I always wonder, and I'm always curious, whether or not he lost a shit ton of money on bringing an arty into his world, you know, and paying him to be kind of like a real attention getter at Compound Media, and, you know, putting up billboards. God, there was a huge, beautiful billboard right before he went through the Lincoln Tunnel from New Jersey to New York. And I know that he invested a lot of money in making the arty thing happen. And then all of a sudden there's an arty, you know, who maybe showed up, maybe didn't show up, you know, pulled the same shit that he used to do in his very tail end days at Howard. And I just wonder how that affected him financially, and then also his relationship with Artie. I'm always curious about like how that kind of went down, you know, because we're working on
I didn't follow much of that. I just
go ahead, babe.
I just heard some loose ends on that whole episode, and obviously there was money lost, and then from what I know, Keith is no longer there. So there's been a huge shakeup over there, and it must be because of the Artie Lang fallout.
I would think so. I think it financially had to kill him a little bit. You know, I'm pretty sure Artie wanted money up front, and then probably had like a weekly stipend of some sort, and maybe some sort of ad revenue sharing deal or whatever it was. But, you know, Artie started fucking up really early on. I mean, it didn't take that long for Artie's, you know, real horrible drug issues to reveal themselves. And so it became, like I said, the tail end days of him with Howard before Tim had to fire out, you know, because Tim's the one who had to fire Artie. You know, it was never spoken of on air. But, you know, Artie had tried to kill himself, and, you know, Tim pulled him into his office and said, I got to let you go, bud. You know, I didn't really want to do that, but I got to let you go. And
where's Artie now? Where's Artie?
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. We are working on month 6 that not a single person has heard hide nor hair from him. Month 6.
I mean, he must have pre-existing conditions, you know. And here's another question for you that my people wanted me to ask you. There's 2 more questions. In your opinion, pandemic, scamdemic, or plandemic?
Interesting. Scam, plan, or pan. So, you know, I was down in Florida when all this shit hit the fan, and I was planning a trip to Argentina for 18 days. And on days when I can't sleep, I normally will put the radio on, and I put on NPR. And before NPR comes on, it's BBC News, and which always puts me to sleep. And you know, and they're talking about this virus in Wuhan, and, you know, and that the Chinese were already building a a warehouse basically to put their sick into. So it's like, shit, I just heard about this 2 weeks ago and they're already building like an entire complex to hold these people. You know, this shit is bad. So the fact that it started where it did, listen, you know, you can talk theories about how, you know, basically the Spanish flu of 1812, all the flus that we have subsequently had since then were tendrils of the 1812 flu. And so it isn't unusual for something to mutate itself into being something a little bit more dangerous and a lot more scary. However, back in 1812, we didn't have, you know, media the way it is, and at the height of the disease back then, the virus back then, you would be hard pressed to find even a small article about it in the New York Times. And, you know, right before it reached its apex, where, you know, finally became a front page story, it was like a little note on page like 10 or 15 of the paper, basically saying that, you know, today 275,000 people died. I mean, people were dropping dead on the fucking subways here. Yeah. And so it wasn't, we set off a panic for something that I'm not necessarily sure was panic driven. Now, you know, talk to somebody who's had it or to somebody who lost a parent, and, you know, it's not going to be the same narrative, obviously. But I had gone to China about 12, 13 years ago, and I came home with H1N1, and it was a horrific flu, horrific. And I had no idea that's what it was. I was down for the count, literally just could not lift my head from my bed for a solid 2.5, almost 3 weeks. And
now, what did you take? What did you take for that?
They had no idea what it was. So I started me on like some, you know, basic antibiotics. I was on like a 7-day, like Zithromax or whatever it was. Nothing helped, nothing. And then my brother-in-law happens to be a doctor, and I called. I was like, Jeffrey, I can't do anything. I can't move. I can't lift my head. And he put me on.
You know what they say, the side effects of H1N1 is?
What?
Anybody who had it and survived, they start an anti-Howard Stern podcast.
I know that that's a side effect of it, and, you know, my hate is strong. Yeah. So he gave me steroids and something else, and I wound up coming out of it very, very shortly after that. But I wouldn't wish that illness on anyone. So I think that it might be a little bit more of a pandemic that became a scaredemic. And I also feel, and I've been very, very vocal about this on my podcast, that, you know, we are a country of 330 million people. And yes, we've had over 200,000 deaths. So the odds of probability are in your favor. But, you know, you could talk to somebody on my forum who has relatives who went up to a wedding in Portland, and 9 of them came down with COVID, and 2 of them are in the hospital on respirators right now. So it's just, and I also think that because we as Americans, we eat horribly. We are an overweight, obese bunch of people. We have a lot of pre-existing conditions, even if we don't think that we do. And we eat things that are full of like hormones. We have over-medicated ourselves. We take antibiotics for every fucking sniffle. And so our bodies don't really have the ability to react, I think, the way they are supposed to when something like this hits us. And that's my thought. But I think, listen, when I came back and the shit was hitting the fan here in New York City, I had been, let me see, it was probably like the second week of March I came back to New York. And between Argentina and Florida and here, I had been on 14 flights in 20 days, maybe a little bit more, 22 days.
Oh, come on. That's insanity.
Yeah, wow. Well, I flew all over Argentina. I went to Patagonia and came back. And then I flew into Miami, drove back to the other coast, flew back to New York. You know, I was all over the place. And, but you know what? I knew the shit was coming, and I knew it was going down. And I had masks, I had antibacterial, I didn't touch my face, and I took care of myself. And to me, had we done what me did back early on like that, I think we would be kind of over it a little bit now. But you know what? Who the fuck knows? I mean, you see France are cutting down. They're doing quarantines again. They're shutting shit down. Italy
Sure.
is thinking. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I think that I spoke to a friend who a new friend. I just met this guy who works for Johnson & Johnson, and he works in immunology or infectious diseases or something like that. And he said it's probably going to be about 7 months before we have something that is actually good for the masses. He's like, and even then, we're probably going to have booster shots with it because it's mutating. It's constantly mutating. Once they do something and they think they have it kind of down pat, it mutates. So it's a really, really weird fucking virus. And I can't imagine that the Chinese would be so insidious as to hurt their own people as well as us, as well as the rest of the fucking world. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just very bizarre to me. So that's my theory. I'm sticking with it. Oh my God, did I lose you? I totally lost him. All right, I'll obviously have to delete this, but I lost you.
We are back.
I lost you.
I'm back.
I lost you. I went on a whole
Can you hear me?
tirade. Yes. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
All right, cool.
That's just because I'm driving. No. Here's another question for you.
Go.
And we want an answer as candid. You're always candid. Why has Howard Stern escaped the scrutiny of the Me Too movement?
Beats the shit out of me. Between the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, all the fucking movements, he has adroitly bypassed every fucking movement that is out there. And believe me, not for the lack of us trying. I mean, we were all over him with the Millie Bobby Brown thing because he used to portray himself as like a agent to the stars, and he would talk about Millie Bobby Brown and how she's going to be a really, really big hit once she starts to grow some tits. And it was just really kind of disgusting. And it's like, dude, she's 14 years old. Like, can you fucking move on to somebody who might be more age appropriate? And I think here's my theory on the Me Too movement, specifically on the Me Too movement, and not the blackface or any of that kind of stuff. When you realize it, and when you look at him in the past, and you look at who he would have in, there were two things going on that enabled it to be the way it was. There's lots of fucking porn stars who want, some attention and some notoriety, and to be on a show that at the time was, the world's most listened to radio show, right? So it's super easy to be able to hire girls who want to show their tits and do stuff like that. And also don't forget that he was recording it half the time. So, he'd be able to put it onto like a pay-per-view or a Howard TV or, with something covering it up and put it onto the E channel. And so he used it. I still think that he's just deep down inside a fucking nerd and a half. I don't think he went on any kind of fucking mad tear. I think Jeffrey Epstein, delusionally thought that this is what this man was doing. But I think he's always been a nerd. And, I had this interview with Dominic Barbara, who would swear to you, he's like, I don't believe that Howard had more sex with more than 3 or 4 people his entire lifetime.
Well,
and
no, I know Dominic, but I'd have to say this with all due respect. After he split from Allison, apparently he went on a big tear.
Mad tear, as he used to call it. Yeah, I've heard about some people that he had sex with, both of the stripper kind and of the peripheral DC list actress type person. But what people love to tell me about or talk about is the fact that both Angie Everhart, which I do believe he slept with. I do, because AJ Benza told me the story about how,
so you believe Howard slept with Everhart?
I do. Apparently she used to sleep by his house, and, he would come home from work and she'd still be in the same fucking position and be like, I can't believe you haven't done anything all goddamn day.
Now, this was after Allison or during Allison? Was he cheating on Allison?
So, there's a lot of word about that. Like, did he sleep with Mary McCormick while they were on the set of Private Parts? He already was buying that apartment whilst he was filming Private Parts, right? So, he had somewhere to sleep that was close enough to the city because they were filming at Astoria Studios. So, I think a lot of this was in the works already. We always talk about conspiracy theories on our show, but I firmly believe that Allison was probably cheating on him, which is why she got married legitimately 3 weeks, maybe a month after their divorce was final. So I think that she was with this guy already. But, here he was basically playing with himself and calling gay chat lines in the fucking basement with Ralph. So who wants that husband? Yeah, that's what he was doing with his free time.
So you think what triggered the divorce was Allison cheating on Howard, not vice versa?
A lot of divorced men, like, my husband who is divorced, will always tell you that, men never want to be the one who is responsible for leaving a household. They will cause it to happen, but they don't want to have the guilt on their head that they are the actual responsible party for saying that they're leaving. And I feel like, Howard did enough to make her, and it's so funny because of course all this is going on through Private Parts, which is supposed to be this ode love story to his wife, right? So during all that time is when they're basically not even talking to each other. And I think probably for me, the straw that broke the camel's back is that Howard then flies off to Cannes. He didn't even bring Allison with him, yet he brings all these like porn stars with him, including very young Jenna Jameson. And so, here he is, living the life of the pseudo actor now / most popular radio DJ. And I think he kind of liked it, because Nerd Boy was getting attention that he never had otherwise. So I think
you can't be serious that you think he's only slept with 2 or 3 women in his life. Or
I'm going to go with 4 or 5, but I firmly believe that when a Beth comes into his life, a kind of tall, blonde girl who's interested in him, or that he thinks is interested in him for him and not for his money, which I think is the total crock of shit. But yeah, that this person would fall for him, that he fell hard for her. I think Allison was absolutely the first person he had sex with. I don't believe any of his stories about him getting laid in college, because he met Allison like his first year in school, which was basically 13th grade, because he didn't get accepted into Boston's regular program. He had to take remedial classes because he was kind of fucking stupid. So he met Allison. He was like 19 years old. So, and then he married her like as soon as he got out of school. So, I don't think there were any tears there. And I think that most of what he did on air was to stimulate the male populace who were his demographic.
Yeah.
Now,
and what about all these disgruntled employees from the Stern show? Like, there's been a lot of allegations against Stern and the producers of the Stern show about poor labor relations. Do you buy into that?
I 1000% know that there were a couple of lawsuits that were never actually went to fruition, and I guess there were payoffs and NDAs and whatever of interns working for free, or interns who thought they were exploited during the intern beauty pageants that they used to do and things like that. And after that happened, you never, ever, other than Lisa G being from the newsroom and Penny Crone, you never had employees, non-news related, who were female ever on that show ever again, ever. And that's because he learned his lesson probably the hard way with having to pay out.
Were there any rumblings of sexual harassment?
There were rumblings of sexual harassment, but not by Howard's doing, but by other people, in the back office. Listen, because they all felt so enabled and emboldened to be douchebags and, to treat women as if they were pieces of meat, because that was the don't forget, most of the people that work on that show who have worked there over 20 years, every single one of them has worked there like over 20 years. They know no other way to be except for the way that Howard is. And so if they think that they can get away with this kind of shit, then they will. And I think that's what happened. And, who else falls into that category, sadly enough, was like a Vinny Favale, who, totally got Me Too'd over at the Colbert Show after Letterman left. And he was another one. He came from the old school of guys, who could talk shit however they wanted to, not realizing that all of a sudden there's a bunch of like very, very wimpy fucking millennials who really can't take a fucking joke. And so that's actually going to be a real come to Jesus moment for half these people when they actually have to leave there and think that they can be the person that they were on that show, because they cannot. As it is, most of them are fucking aged out of being in the entertainment industry. But I think that they're going to be Vinnied. A lot of them are going to be Vinnied if they go somewhere else.
Oh,
so,
yeah. This new contract.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I don't know that there is a new contract. No. I was just going to say, I think a lot of the women who came onto the show truly wanted to be there, truly had something to promote, whether it was like some stupid porn or something that they were doing, and yes, maybe it was exploitive, but not to the point where Howard did anything wrong other than give his listeners what they wanted. Okay, what were we going to say? I'm sorry.
Interesting. I've heard rumblings from insiders saying that he's not pleased that I'm writing about him now.
That's a good thing.
Should I be afraid?
Of what? What is there to be afraid of a Howard anymore? What's he going to do? He talks about Trump so much because all he wants is that attention. All he wants is Trump to like make mention of him. He's in his waning years, he's eligible for fucking Medicaid now, Medicare, whatever it's called. He's in his mid 60s. He's not. I mean, I can't tell you, and I have traveled the world. I cannot tell you how many times I've said, I do a podcast. Oh, what is it on? And I'll be like, well, this radio guy in America. Who? It's like Howard Stern, and they're like, who? And so it's not like he's and people who do know him will be like, oh my God, is he still on the air? So I'm not necessarily sure that there's any care for him, but conversely, he will never, ever, ever give my show or what we do the time of fucking day. He doesn't want anybody to have any reason whatsoever to. And listen, he did the same thing to Artie. Wrote a book. He must have begged in 1,000 times for Gary to let him on the air. And they said, no, man, sorry, we got no time for you. Perez Hilton, who was actually a very good friend of the show, volunteered to shove his finger up fucking Benji's ass outside of the Sirius compound, like at his condo or whatever that he has here in the city. And he came out with a book just recently and was completely rejected by Gary. They said, no, we're kind of booked up for the rest of the year.
How they wouldn't have him on.
Would not have him on. And he was a true friend of the show and would not have him on. So he basically is doing the show he wants to do for him, for no one else. We constantly say, who is this show for? And nobody can really define who the show is for anymore. And, I think that they'd be out of their fucking minds to re-sign him. Really, I do. But I don't know where else he would go. I don't know where else he would go where your numbers are, fictitious bullshit that nobody can actually quantify, because you can't hear. He thinks that he has a third of all subscribers of Sirius listen to him, and I think that's bullshit. I have questions for you. I want to talk about the Frank Sinatra thing because I find it kind of I find it kind of interesting that an Epstein would think that a Sinatra could actually give a shit about a Stern, and right? I mean, come on, it's Frank. I mean, for God's sakes. So I was reading, and I'm going to quote from your book. It was Epstein who first alerted me that Stern's constant paranoia and erratic behavior was during the 90s was due to his fear of being rubbed out by the notorious mobsters, the Gambino family, because of his constant derision of legendary crooner Frank Sinatra. So yeah, it was actually Billy West who had made that little ditty about him, which I actually really want to play so that we can kind of goof on it a second. So let me see if I can find it for us. Hang on a second.
Awesome.
Because I do love this. All right.
Well, while you're finding it, I will answer your question. No, Epstein really had a lot of information on Stern. He was obsessed with him. There were two people Epstein was overly obsessed with, was Princess Diana and Howard Stern. And he really wanted to know everything about them and basically stalk them. I believe him. I do believe. I fact checked, and I believe there's where there's smoke, there's fire.
I believe he stalked him, and I believe the penis story, and I believe that he would have some sort of fascination with a like-aged Jewish guy from Long Island who he could associate with, and just in terms of like his overall demeanor, and maybe somewhere in Jeffrey Epstein's deluded brain, he thought that, a Stern was like, and you know what, maybe in the 90s when Stern was a god, he was a god to him. He was somebody that you would look at as a Jewish man in the same age group and kind of idolize because of his ability to bring women on the air and make them just drop their fucking pants for you. But I think I personally feel that he is like slightly misplaced with his thoughts on being rubbed out. And I just only remember this from, because I definitely believe that Howard carries a gun with him at all times, and he also concealed carries. That's why he always has a jacket on, so that you don't see the gun underneath his shirt there.
And I didn't get that from Epstein. I got that from Judith Regan, who's a good friend of mine, and she was very close to Howard back in the day.
I want to talk about her too. But the thing about Sinatra, when Sinatra started to wane, and I guess he had maybe like some memory issues and had Alzheimer's and whatever, I kind of feel like it was something that classically Howard would mock, because that's what he does, right? So other than this, which is a phenomenal bit, which I'm going to play it right now because this is one of the funniest things he's ever done. So hang on.
By the tabloids, Frank Sinatra has Alzheimer's, but it hasn't slowed him down. Frank's new album, I Remember What's Her Name, is available to you now. Hear Frank attempt these great hits.
Luck be an egg cream tonight.
It's the new Frank.
Love and tractors, I've got you under my house.
See, it's very silly. But it was very much a Billy West thing. And I'm not necessarily sure if it's the chicken or the egg here, like if this was something Billy West did and Howard played it, because all of the ones that I've been able to find on YouTube are not Howard Stern related at all, which is a curious thing, because you would think that they would be. But yeah, they are mainly attributed to Billy West and not to Howard. But I don't think Howard's smart enough to have been able to do this on his own anyway. All right, let me finish.
How does it go?
But there
I know how it goes. Start the music again, please.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Play that. I love it.
I know, it's so silly.
Let's
play it. It's so much fun.
Wise has gone blank.
Chicago, it's a wonderful band.
Old Empty Head sings My Funny Valentine.
My funny turpentine,
my favorite.
Sweet comic Frankenstein.
Hear My Kind of Town.
My kind of town, Galveston is my kind of town.
Hear interviews with Frank himself.
Mr. Sinatra.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie?
The Manchurian Restaurant and The Man with the Golden Nose, hey.
Could you name some of your good Hollywood friends?
Look, we hung with the six-pack, definitely ran around with those people. Shirley MacLaine, she was wonderful. Hazel Bishop.
See, I love this shit.
It's amazing.
I remember it at the time, and I remember it being like a funny bit that they did. I just can't wrangle in my brain how something like that, especially when he was already in the throes of a little bit of a touch of the Alzheimer's, that he would think about a Stern as being somebody that he, would be upset with. It
drove him off the rails. It drove Frank off the rails. He couldn't take it that Stern was playing this. And Stern made fun of Frank a few times, alluding to the Alzheimer's as he was segueing into these skits. So Frank was not a happy camper. And Frank was the type of guy, if you piss him off, he was not the best person to piss off. He had a huge temper. When I was very young, I was friends with one of Frank's ex-wives, Ava Gardner, who lived in London at the time. And she told me horrific stories about Frank's temper, claimed that he beat her and that he kicked her in the mouth, and she had a scar over her lip. And the thing that always amazed me about Ava, I think she died at 62, and I met her when she was like 59 or something like that. And I met her in London and became very good friends. And she once gave me a record, personally signed by Frank, like an old vinyl. Back in those days, I was broke, and I remember I pawned it. Can you imagine what that thing would be worth today?
I can't believe you did that. Yeah, well, you had to.
I really did. I pawned it for like maybe £8.
Oh, Jesus, really?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm serious. Yeah. It's horrible. But Ava said back then, this must have been in a couple of years before she died. It must have been in 87 or 88. Ava said back then that Frank, if you just piss him off in the slightest way, switch countries.
Yeah, he probably had a trigger fucking temper.
Yes.
Yeah, I could completely see that.
And quote unquote money connections.
Yeah.
So he was not the type of guy you wanted to get aggravated.
I believe that. I do. I believe that. I just wonder the veracity of that comment, considering that he was already, in the throes of Alzheimer's, and so why would he give a shit? But I could see it happening. I could see, my dad had Alzheimer's, and I remember that he almost, the nicest person in the world, but almost like angry a lot of times, unjustifiably so. Yeah. So who knows what goes on in your brain at that point? There was another thing about.
No, you're right. Well, hold on. Alzheimer's is the most horrific disease.
Absolutely.
I mean, the way it just wears you down with no end in sight, no chance of recovery, and just you see people bent over, they can't speak. It for me, there's not much worse than that.
No, and you know what? It's horrible to see somebody going through it. I luckily lost him at a point where, it was before he didn't know who I was, but I couldn't imagine, I couldn't imagine the person I love the most in the world not having any idea who the person is that they're looking at. So, I remember when he died, I just had people contribute to the Alzheimer's Foundation because I couldn't imagine, anything more important than fixing that. Yeah, go.
Yeah, go ahead, please. No,
well, I'm just going to do something that I also thought was funny, and I wasn't sure if you had seen it in a while, but I know that Cumia kind of talks about how Howard's the big fucking prick in charge over at Sirius, right? So he, he's the guy who constantly will mock people who they say, Ellen, perfect example, don't look her in the eye, don't talk to her, don't pay any attention. And I know we were talking about why the Opies were fired and what happened there. And I don't know if you've seen the video, the classic video of of why we all think Opie was fired. And yes, he filmed somebody in the bathroom, but this, I think, is reason. So if you haven't watched this in a while, I think it's like a really good one because we goof on it all the time. So here, I'm going to show this to you.
Yeah.
Can you see it on the screen?
Awesome. Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Look at it now.
This is the best. So the pull up to this is that Opie is trying to get into his office. You know, it's first thing in the morning, and the doors are locked. And he can't get in. And he's like, what the fuck is going on? And so, of course, you see the security guard there. So this is like the main entranceway to Sirius. On the left-hand side, there is the fish tank. That's where a lot of people do like performances and stuff like that. And then Howard's office is off to the right over here. It's completely blocked off from everything else. Right. Okay, so here we go.
That's right.
Waiting to go into Sirius XM. Just waiting. And waiting. Lockdown. We're in lockdown.
Can you fucking imagine? This time has gone by, right?
As soon as Howard Stern passes, we're allowed in the building, right, Kenny? It's lockdown.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we're being patient. And you've already told me it's not you.
Can you fucking imagine?
There he goes.
There's Ronnie.
Good morning.
Look at his security guard. He's only 5'2".
And now he'll let me in.
Oh, yeah. I've seen this.
Can you fucking
wait for him.
Imagine that you have to do that every morning?
Yeah.
This is the man who will say to you, oh, you know, such hubris to be that kind of person that people can't look them in the eye and blah, 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 blah. But here he is coming through like the secret downstairs basement entrance. You can't go up in the elevator with him. You know, it's completely blocked off so that the king can come in and go to his desk. The balls on him.
No, you're right. I believe I mentioned that in chapter 1 of the book.
Yes, you did.
Controversy about and Anthony corroborated that. And as you mentioned here, that's not being a team player. That's being extremely narcissistic. And who the fuck wants to get Howard Stern like at 6 in the morning or 4 in the morning or 5 whenever he comes through there? That's craziness. That's really huge.
He lives 8 minutes away from the office.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, he starts the show at 7. So this has got to be maybe like 6:30, 6:45, something like that. You know, he maybe gives himself a half hour. And the fact that you have to lock down the entirety of a fucking programming operation so that he can walk in is the height of hubris to me. It's the height of fucking narcissism to be that man. And
you are right.
Yeah, he's gotten away with it for years, so that's who he is.
You are 1,000% right. There's no two ways about it. And the thing about Howard, you have to wonder now, and this goes back to the Sinatra theory. Was somebody trying to rub out Howard and Howard wasn't telling us? Why does he carry a gun all the time? Why is he going through secret tunnels? Why is he forcing the employees to wait when he goes in? Come on, it's not normal behavior.
He has like 4 or 5 Secret Service. He has 4 or 5 bodyguards at all times.
That's right. But why? My question is why? Does the Gambino family still have a hit out on Howard, or does somebody else? And that's my whole point. I know you're skeptical about the Sinatra theory, but everything falls into place with how paranoid this guy became. Because in the book, I say he was never so paranoid until Sinatra put a hit out on him. And then he became ultra paranoid the rest of his life.
It's a good theory, and I really like it. I will tell you, though, the story that, you know, like I said, that Grillo always tells is that one time when they were on their way into K-Rock, It was Grillo's job to meet him downstairs. So the car would pull up, and then he would go with Grillo and Ronnie into the building. And one day, very early in the morning, some fucking crazy guy just came running at him, Howard, and almost attacked him. And it scared the shit out of Howard. And he's like, fuck, if somebody can get that close to me, at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's no telling what can happen to me, when I'm just walking down the street. And apparently he became really paranoid after that. And he always has bodyguards. Doesn't matter where he goes, he has bodyguards. I have pictures of him when he was at Nobu, like last year. He went with Beth to eat dinner. Bodyguard was like standing right outside. He went in with Beth.
Nobu in New York? The New York Nobu? Okay.
Yeah, the one uptown.
Gotcha.
He knew exactly, the chef, the waiter knew exactly what they were ordering. They both had a water. They bring over like a plate of sashimi, and he was in and out within like 20 minutes. And then, he walked out, and his bodyguard standing right there next to him. And so that's the way he kind of rolls now. I mean, it's just kind of weird to me that he's become like a paranoid old man. And I always will tell you that, having COVID is like a fucking dream come true for him. He gets to stay in his house. He doesn't have to talk to anybody. He doesn't have to do anything except, barely write in a friggin' show 3 hours a day, 3 times a week. And he is an introvert's dream now. He doesn't have to do anything. Yeah. And I think there's going to come a day where he does retire and we will never see him again. We will never see him again. He will just die that way.
Where do you think his sex life is these days with Beth? And by the way, that typo was corrected. You found a typo in her name in the book. Thank you. The check is in the mail. And,
I didn't want to come off as being a dick by saying something to you about it. But a typo, right?
Oh, come on.
Yeah, okay.
No, that was fantastic.
I do want to not talk about Howard for a really quick second because I really want to talk about Prince Andrew because I had just one question about him. Where I think definitely that this scandal is just going to fucking blow up as long as they can keep Ghislaine Maxwell alive. I think that so much shit is going to hit the fan like in 2021 that our heads will wind up exploding. This book of yours is going to have 40 fucking chapters. I'm telling you, it's going to be like War and Peace. I know you're just going to continue with this, but my thought is, and my thinking on it is, would a Prince Andrew have ever had to have said anything about this guy being his friend or anything like that if there weren't pictures? Like if there was never that picture of him with that Virginia Guffrey or whatever her name is, do you think he would have absolutely just denied it till death and called it a day?
Never. That's a very perceptive question. No, he would have just said,
he would just deny till death.
Never acknowledged. Yeah, 100%. That's even a no-brainer. I mean, all these guys are cheats. All these guys are dishonest. I mean, Buckingham Palace tried to stop my book. And
really?
Let me tell you something. Oh, yeah. And I've been to this rodeo because Scientology tried to stop my book. So I have a lot of experience with people. That's why all my books are embargoed. I think you were the only person aside from my publishing team who knew it was coming out. And you didn't throw me under the bus. Thank you very much. You were a real. No, I'm just saying. You were a very good team player. Everything I asked you delivered, all the background, all the information, and you were extremely professional. But with Buckingham Palace coming after me, I actually thought the book might not come out because the pressure was so hard. And up until like 10 minutes before publication date, because it's an ebook, so they just, I guess, upload it and put it out.
Right.
I thought, hey, this might be the first book I might get stopped at, and fucking Monique's going to kill me again because she'll think I'm like, oh, he's putting out a Stern book. And I said, oh, my gosh, how am I ever going to tell her? Like, I'm going to have to avoid her for the rest of my life because I've told her for 4 years something's coming out. And you stood by me. And you stood by me. you never lost your cool with me. You were fucking patient, but I thought this is it.
Everybody fucking
I
asked
know.
me, "Oh, what's going on with Ian? What's going on with Ian? What's going on
I
with
know.
Ian?" Like, I think it's going to morph into something else, maybe like a bigger picture kind of thing. You know, it may not even
You never
work
threw me under the bus. You never fucking threw me under the bus. No, but I got to give you props for that because, whoa, this was a marathon, man. I had a lot of trouble getting this shit out. So at the end of the day, I think with Stern and Buckingham Palace, they're very litigious people and litigious operations. And Buckingham Palace, when you mentioned Prince Andrew, look, I got to be fair. I'm not like out to crucify anybody. Yeah, I wanted to nail Prince Andrew. Yes. But I specialize in true crime. I've done many true crime books. And I found flaws in Virginia Roberts' timeline. And that's where I found the smoking gun that, hey, Andrew's certainly a womanizer. Like, I interviewed dozens of women who claim they had affairs with Andrew. But as far as banging underage girls,
yeah,
I got to be fair, man. I can't make the shit up. There were flaws in the timeline. And if she was a bit off, her birthday is in August. I think it's August 3rd. I'm really bad with dates and all. I'm not a photo. I don't have my notes in front of me. I think it's August something, August 3rd. Yeah. Now, if she was a few months off, and if she was 18 years old, hey, it's not statutory rape, okay? Then you need consent. But at 17, you don't need consent. It's statutory. But with Roberts, I got her on the timeline because I interviewed employees of the nightclub she alleges to have been in that night with Andrew. And I interviewed the managers of the Pizza Express where Andrew's alibi was, and it checked out. He was there with his then 12-year-old princess daughter. So I got to be fair. I wanted to nail him, of course. I would have had a great story. But there's no smoking gun proof that Andrew ever slept with underage. Yes, he slept with young girls, like 18, 19, 20. He's a sex addict. And that's where a lot of people are pissed at me now. I've had so many threatening emails because they all believe Roberts. But I got to do my job, Monique. I can't make shit up, And I did want to nail him. Trust me on that. But I'm sorry, there's no smoking gun evidence.
Well, I get the timeline issue, but I can only go from personal experience because I was 16 when I was in college, and I used to go to Limelight all the time, and that was my hang. I had a VIP card.
That was owned by Peter Gatien. That was owned by a Canadian boy, Peter Gatien, one-eyed guy.
I knew Peter Gatien. I knew his daughter also, who actually ran the whole operation. Yes, and that's how I got the VIP card. Wow. And so I used to go and hang out with.
Do you know how Peter bought Limelight?
No.
It's a very interesting story. Peter played hockey up in Canada, where I'm from.
Oh, I think I knew that. Yeah.
Somebody took out his eye. They took out his eye. And he used the insurance money to become, he owned Tunnel, he owned not Limelight, he owned Limelight London. He used the insurance money to open nightclubs. And I met Peter Gatien several times. He was actually a very nice guy, but, he got deported years later in the States.
I know.
Because of all the drugs at Limelight.
All the drugs, yeah.
Anyhow, sorry for shifting gears, but
no, that's okay because his daughter actually kind of ran the business for him. She was marginally older than me. She was probably like in her early 20s when she was doing this, and so she knew exactly what to do to hit on the right thing. So anyway, my only point to the story really is the fact that I was 16, 17, when I used to go there, and I met everyone. I met Andy Warhol and Duran and just like everyone. And you know what? I couldn't tell you dates. I couldn't tell you, who I met when. And you know what? And I only give her a pass on this because, you know, she does have pictures with him. I think that she was trafficked. You know, I think that, you know,
Sure.
even if she was probably, you know, 17 going on 18 or 18-ish at that point. But I think that she had been around like bad shit for at least a year at that point. I mean, you talk about in your book about, you know, that 15-year-old who was kind of passed around to all these fucking guys. And, you know, I think to myself, even if I was 16 at Limelight and doing really bad things, you know, in the bathroom, the reality is my mother always knew where the fuck I was. You know, it's like, I'm 16. I'm still a minor. My parents know that I am out right now and that I'll probably get in a cab and be on my way home soon. And so like for 15-year-olds to be able to travel, you know, around the world basically with these people is like unfathomable to me how that could actually happen. God, you just have so much stuff in the fucking book. The Pablo Escobar thing, the Mossad thing. I mean, there's just so many juicy little tidbits.
Well, no, I'm gonna give you another exclusive. I'm gonna give you another exclusive, okay? Because honestly, you've been so patient with my sorry ass. Like, you really never threw me under the bus. I'll never forget that, because you had every opportunity to do it, because I was so slow putting out the Stern stuff, and I really had an uphill battle, but you never lost it with me. So I got to give you this. I will out Epstein coming up as being a double agent, 1,000%. And I mentioned the Israelis, but there were many more. And Epstein was playing every side possible, and he was dealing arms to the Saudis. He was also involved with Libya. And all that's going to come out in the chapters that are coming up.
I am blown away by how he had all this fucking time to be the man that he was.
You know, I never thought of that. Until you mentioned it. And it's a very perceptive point, because, how the fuck did this guy get time to make, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars?
And have fucking girls coming in, you know, sometimes 3 in a day to like give you massage. I mean, this is why I feel like he probably did a shit ton of either, you know, people who could put needles in their dicks to get them hard, or Viagra or whatever. But I'm going to go out there and say he was probably fucking impotent, and this is what made him feel like a man, and this is why he did it.
That's
you know. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah.
But it just started to think about it as I was reading the book.
Yeah, but I just wanted to further, because, you know, you're into the Stern stuff, and I think there's going to come a time where you abandon the Stern stuff and get your own show and never mention Stern. I'm being honest with you, because you're so
the odds are I won't.
So
the odds are I won't.
You know, well, I think you deserve your own show. There's no doubt about that. So anyhow, no matter what, Epstein, his obsession with Stern went so deep that, here's the rumor. I got to throw it out. And
I lost him. I lost him again. I can't believe he was going to give us some goodie. Now I lost him.
Okay, so where were we?
I don't know. You were just about to give me something, and then you just blipped out. So we were just talking about Jeffrey. We were talking about Mossad.
So here's the big thing. Yeah, here's the big thing. It got to the point where Epstein was all over Stern so much that there's rumors that Epstein had an affair with Stern's ex. And that's coming up in future chapters.
No way. With Allison, no way.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
No way. No way.
That's what I've heard.
I don't believe that for a second. I couldn't imagine.
Okay.
I couldn't imagine a circle that basically a stay-at-home housefrau who wound up being what is she, like a social worker or whatever the fuck she was, would ever run in a circle where Jeffrey Epstein would have even the slightest bit of interest in her. Like, she's way out of his, first off, she's
rumor was
age range. And, unless he's doing some sort of fanaticism that he had with Howard just to fucking fuck with somebody that he fucked, I don't know.
Yeah.
Would there be any other?
The rumor back in the day. He was so obsessed with Stern, he wanted to sleep with Stern's wife.
He'd have a better chance of getting Beth than I think he would have any kind of interest in being with Allison. I never think of her that way. Maybe
when you mentioned Beth,
kids, she's very maternal. She's and it's different when somebody is your contemporary age-wise. If you're a Jeffrey Epstein and you're dating like 16-year-olds, there's no way you're 55-year-old Jeffrey Epstein dating a 55-year-old. It just doesn't happen, Everybody trades in for a fucking newer model. I can't even imagine. And Allison was already, Allison. She was mom. I don't know. I mean, unless in some weird fucking brain spasm of Jeffrey's. I mean, if he was that obsessed with Howard, I get it. It's kind of like, 1 degree of separation when you like somebody and you think they're like the fucking hottest thing and you wind up sleeping with like their brother or you wind up fucking somebody that like Angelina Jolie fucked and then you feel like you have this like 1 degree of separation. I don't know. I just can't even imagine. I can't.
Yeah.
So you can say it all you want, but
me too. I was very skeptical. I was very skeptical, but this is what a couple of people in Epstein's camp claim.
I love it.
Years and years ago.
Yeah.
But, me too. Like yourself, I was extremely skeptical, but I heard this from 2 people.
I would not doubt that he's a sick enough man that he would want that, just as like a sycophantic kind of. I really am. I mean, I don't think of it as.
Hey,
can you hear me? Yes, I can.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Wow, crazy forces interfering with the broadcast.
Wait, time out.
Put you in
Stay
quarantine.
there.
I've told you this, and that's why I come on, because I actually enjoy the process of being on your show, because you're an ultimate pro. I don't give a fuck about the Stern stuff. Like I told you, there's some things about Howard I like. There's something I dislike. I respect your opinion. And I don't even look, it's not like you're some maniacal anti-Howard Stern person. I think you're just concerned about the direction he's gone. And I find you very balanced. You're not some fanatic, but I go on record to say this. I know my people have listened to you. They think you're fantastic. I think you're fantastic. And I just want you to take it to the next level with your broadcast career, because I would subscribe in a heartbeat, if you'd have your own regular show.
Thank you, love. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I want everybody out there to know that Ian has a new book out. It's called Controversy, Sex, Lies, and Dirty Money by the World's Powerful Elite. Apparently, it's going to be 6 volumes, and he's coming out with one. Like, how are you working it now? Are you doing a volume per what?
Yeah, volume 1 is like 10 episodes. As you said, it's like episodes. It's 10 weeks of different chapters, and it's all about Epstein, Stern. Anybody associated with royalty, like Epstein, was infatuated with the British royal family. He was infatuated with the purported king of all media, Howard Stern. And so it's all about royalty, volume 1. And then I'll take a break. Volume 2 will probably come out early 2021. Again, though, I got to let your listeners know this, and it's very important that I make this very clear. I've had about 200 interview requests since the book launched. I did page 6 because I've had a long-standing relationship with them. I don't
saw
know if you
that.
saw the article, Monique,
I
but
did.
it was pretty good. And I did one German TV interview. It was for RTL. I've worked with them for a long time. They're a big network in Germany. And then I'm doing Radio Gunk, and I'll tell you why. Because when the book about Stern was announced a few years ago, that's when I first came in contact, I think, with Monique, shortly after that. And she never, in 4 years, she got a lot of flack, I think, for promoting me. And there was no book. And I didn't know what to say because I had written a lot of it, but nobody wanted to put it out. But with all due respect, she never threw me under the bus. And I got to say, your patience are admirable. And it should be a lesson to everybody in life. You know, you got to be patient. You got to see the way things play out. And not only that, you became part of the book because you provided me with a lot of background research, and you actually had the courage to go on the record in the book. You're quoted throughout the book in the Stern chapters. And I know my people were very impressed by your quotes. So I owe you the thank you. And that's why I'm here. I mean, I've had well over 200. I don't like giving a lot of interviews. I say, just put the shit out, let the people decide, you know. So I'm being very selective. But I also spoke to Anthony. I did speak to Anthony. I think before the book came out. I don't even remember. But it definitely was right up there that I had to do this interview. And I actually enjoyed it again. So thank you. Really thank you from the bottom of my heart. And just look forward to keep following you because I'm a fan.
Oh, I love you, Ian. Thank you so much. You made my night by saying
Ditto.
that. I really do appreciate that.
Ditto.
All right, guys. So just remember to go find his book on Amazon. It is there. These are Amazon Prime days, like right now. So take advantage of that, and you know you'll probably get it at a fairly good price. It's an easy read. You'll be really interested in a lot of the things he has to say about Jeffrey Epstein in particular. I mean, it's just salacious and delicious, and like all of his books are. And I thank you, Ian. I thank you for being on the show with me tonight.
Always pleasure, and I'm here anytime. There's very few people who I say anytime to, but you're one of them. I know Anthony is, page 6. But, you know, thank you, and God bless, and stay safe to everybody. Stay safe. Stay healthy, and keep following Radio Gunk because the best is yet to come.
Oh, you're the best. All right. Thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate it.
According to the supermarket tabloids, Frank Sinatra has Alzheimer's, but it hasn't slowed him down. Frank's new album, I Remember What's Her Name, is available to you now. Hear Frank attempt these great hits.
Luck be an egg cream tonight.
It's the new Frank.
Love and tractors, I've got you under my house. How does it go? I know how it goes. Start the music again, please.
Old Blue Eyes has gone blank.
Chicago, it's a wonderful band.
Old Empty Head sings My Funny Valentine.
My funny turpentine, sweet comic Frankenstein.
Hear My Kind of Town.
My kind of town, Galveston is my kind of town.
Hear interviews with Frank himself.
Mr. Sinatra,
Yeah.
what's your favorite movie?
The Manchurian Restaurant and the man with the golden nose, hey.
Could you name some of your good Hollywood friends?
Look,
What?
we hung with the six-pack, definitely ran around with those people. Shirley MacLaine, she was wonderful. Hazel Bishop, Jimmy Davis Jr., Don Martin. Hey, don't tell me I can't remember these people. What is this shit?
What did you have for breakfast?
What's breakfast?
Breakfast.
I don't know what that is, man. Hey, cuckoo, baby, don't tell me, huh? Talk down to me, asking me weird questions.
Hear Frank make up words and sing.
Hey, I'm not making it up. I really think those are the words.
Something in the way she cooks.
Send your money now. And, with any luck, Frank will remember to send you your record.
Moonlight in Japan.
Dial now. Dial 1-800-I-FORGET.
Now get out of here or I'll have my legs broken.
Dial 1-800-I-FORGET.
To tell you the truth, I can't remember when I started forgetting.
Order now.
She's getting bitchy. It's that time of month. That's why the lady is a shoe.